I discovered exactly what happens after you die. All of the afterlife questions that I had have now been answered. And so if that is something that you're interested in, like what happens after you die, this video is perfect for you because I'm gonna share exactly what happens after you die. Now, just before I get into it, to set up a little bit of context, I spent 30 years of my life basically as a very strong, devout Christian. So I had this belief of heaven and hell as the afterlife. But I found myself in like existential crisis mode with tremendous spiritual anxiety and doubts and uncertainty. So I went through this spiritual journey that eventually led me out of Christianity, but I still have a very deep love for God, just a non-religious affiliation, but a deep love for God. But on my spiritual journey, I was like devouring different books and talking with people to try and discover the truth of the universe. And there are a couple books that I want to share with you. The first one that I read is called That All Shall Be Saved, and it's a book by David Bentley Hart, and it's on Christian universalism. I'm not gonna go into that book, but basically that book dissolved my belief in there being an eternal hell. After reading that book, I thought it is completely morally unintelligible for there to be an eternal place of punishment. But then I was given another book recommendation, and this is the book that I really want to share with you. And this is the book that with every single page turn, I was just like reading what happens after you die. And like I was just reading it and my jaw was dropped. It's so crazy. The book is called The Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. This one right here, this is the book. Before I share some of the spark notes or something or whatever of this book to give you the answers to what happens after you die, it is super important to understand who Michael Newton is, because knowing his story, I think provides a lot of validity in what you read in this book. Dr. Michael Newton was a board-certified hypnotherapist. He would put people in hypnosis, take them back to points of trauma in their past, and resolve trauma, and people would come away healed. For the majority of his career, first of all, he was an atheist, and second of all, he was not into metaphysical stuff whatsoever. So people would go to him wanting to do past life regressions. He wouldn't entertain doing past life regressions. And then he had 2 clients that changed the trajectory of his entire career. The first client that he had is there was this person that came and said that he had pain in his side and that all his life. And he would go to all these doctors and the doctors would tell this person, the pain isn't real, it's all in your mind. You need to just forget about it and it's gonna go away. But it didn't go away. So this person came to Dr. Newton to find resolution for his pain. He goes into hypnosis. At some point in the session, that person was speaking as if they were fighting in World War I, which was not the time period that he was working with. Dr. Newton was grilling him on all these questions like, who's your commanding officer and what's your battalion and what battlefield are you on? What date is it? And grilling him with all the historical details. Finds out that the person got stabbed by the enemy with a bayonet, so resolves the trauma. The guy comes out of hypnosis, pain is gone. And then Dr. Newton takes all of the historical details that he got and takes it to the war records of London, and all of those details checked out. The next session that changed everything for him was this woman came into his office, totally suicidal, and basically said, I've never felt at home here. He puts the patient under hypnosis, and all of a sudden she starts weeping, and she's weeping with joy. And he's like, what do you see? What's going on? And she basically communicates to him that she's in the spirit world reuniting with her soulmates, and she's so happy to see her soulmates. But that's when he realized that he could speak to people's souls in the spirit world. After these sessions, he completely changed the course of his career. He had over 7,000 different clients, these sessions where he would sit down. He says in the book that it's a very arduous process, but he basically mapped out the spirit world. From the moment that someone dies until the moment they come back for a rebirth. Now I get that right there some people watching this are like, reincarnation, what, blah, blah, like, I don't believe in that, whatever. That's totally fine. I didn't believe that for the vast majority of my life, but this book was pretty compelling to me. So, and after he learned that he could speak with people's souls in the spirit world, and he started mapping out the spirit world, something that was really astonishing to him, and I think, again, is another point for validity, in my opinion. It didn't matter if the client was a Christian, non-Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, or whatever. Once they were in hypnosis and sharing the experience of like what is going on, everything matched. He met with over 7,000 different clients with obviously 7,000 different backgrounds and cultural experiences and whatever and belief systems, and they were all sharing the same thing. So first of all, at the point of death, it's a pretty common experience that when the person dies, the soul that is like liberated from the human body is just that, feels extremely liberated, feels extremely at peace and light. When the soul leaves the body, it is like shedding wet blanket and into a familiar space. People feel very familiar after they depart from their human body. They're able to move around and like basically float around. Some souls leave like the Earth's plane, leaves this dimension like immediately. Typically that's more advanced or like older souls, but younger souls, sometimes souls can hang around for the purpose of consoling their loved ones. But apparently it's a very frustrating experience for the soul to console their loved ones, because there's like, they're there and present, but just can't communicate. But it's such a common experience that souls want to communicate to their loved ones that I am okay, I am at peace, we're gonna see each other soon. That is like, for the souls that linger around to console their loved ones, this is the shared experience. Whether the soul stays and lingers on for a few days or leaves immediately, they all go through the same process, which is like that tunnel experience. The light at the end of the tunnel. Now there's also some exceptions to some of the things I'm gonna share. You know, I'm not gonna go super into detail on the souls that like really linger around and feel like there's unfinished business and stay and that we would recognize as ghosts. He does address that in here. I'm not gonna really go into that. There's also different experiences for souls that have given into a lot of corruption here on Earth in human bodies. And so their experience is a little bit different. I guess I should probably address that because I did mention hell. He said in all of his research, he never came across anyone that talked about an eternal place of punishment, a hell. For the souls that gave into like a lot of wickedness and corruption here on Earth, there are designated places in the spirit world where they go to that's more like a hospital where they need some serious like help. But that's a whole nother thing. I'm not gonna really get into that either because it's for like a very select, these are for souls that have given into like extreme corruption. Anyways, when the souls get to the spirit world, there's like a homecoming where we're welcomed by our soulmates. We'll recognize people maybe as our parents or grandparents or friends or loved ones. There's this big homecoming, and there's also a homecoming with our spirit guides. The spirit home is just like full of like love and light and goodness. We're welcomed from our soulmates and our spirit guides. After that, there's a place of healing because our experience here on Earth is very difficult. Like when souls think about coming to Earth, it's like going to a battlefield. Earth is like a school. It's like a place for us to learn and grow and spiritually ascend, but it's a very hard existence. And so when we get back to the spirit home, there's this place, I think he calls it like this shower of healing, where we receive like this healing and peace. And it's like resting after battle. We eventually meet with our spirit guides and have a life review. We review the life that we had just left and see where we excelled and see where we didn't do so well. The shared experience with this life review is that generally the soul, that we are really hard on ourselves. And in place where we fail, we feel like failures, like we let ourselves down, like we let our spirit guides down. But the response from the guides is always way loving and gracious. It's all this process to spiritually advance and to grow. In some lives we get it, in some lives we don't. But we have this life review with our spirit guides. After that, then there's like this mass transit area that's supposed to be just like the most infinite, massive, expansive terminal, basically. Think of like the busiest airport that you've ever been in with just like millions and millions and millions of souls. There's like this transit area, and this is where you go to eventually go to your soul group or your cluster. You're like with your soulmates. And this is where you spend a lot of your time. Again, time is like so like different in the spirit world, but as far as we know it, the way that we conceptualize things is with time. So you spend a lot of your time with your soulmates in your like cluster group, I believe is what it's called. Your time spent here is, in my understanding, very peaceful, and it's a place of, you're with your soulmates, so like I'm sure that you're probably vibing. I'm sure it's like a pretty fun, good experience, but it's likened to a university, because what you're doing there is you're reviewing your past lives and seeing what you need to work on in the future. There are these cycles of incarnations that we are going through that we're trying to spiritually ascend. We come here to learn spiritual lessons. It might be to overcome, like for example, we might need to overcome jealousy. And we might be able to do that in a life. It might take 200 lives, but we're trying to overcome jealousy and we're trying to spiritually ascend. And once you spiritually ascend high enough, then you'll eventually work your way out of the cycle of reincarnation. And then you become like a junior guide, and then you become a spirit guide, and so on and so forth. And from the spirit world, you're continually ascending with the ultimate goal that will reach unity with Source, with God. So when you're in the university, you are studying and reviewing your past lives, and you're doing that with your soulmates. Your soulmates, by the way, like you do these human lives with your soulmates. Your life here on Earth is like you're playing a character, for example, on a Broadway. And everyone in your life is like a side character for you in your play. And you are a side character for some other people's plays. Your soulmates are these different characters in your life, and the roles are always interchanging. You know, your soulmate, you know, might be a spouse in one life. It might be a child in another life. He or she might be a parent in another life. It's just kind of like you're playing different roles and with your different human incarnations, but ultimately we're all trying to like accomplish these spiritual lessons. We're all trying to spiritually ascend. So we're in this university and we're reviewing our past lives and we're seeing what we need to overcome to spiritually ascend. We're collaborating with our soulmates to do the same thing. We all want to spiritually ascend, ultimately out of this cycle of reincarnation. And that's what this university is about. There's also other experiences outside of the human incarnations here on Earth. We also have opportunities as souls to go to different planets and do different things. So one really interesting case study that was in here talks about going to this planet. It's a place that souls go to practice with creation. Taking elements and matter and all this stuff and literally playing with creation. You start with like you're working with like photosynthesis and like working with growing plants. And then you eventually level up, and this is supposedly very, very, very difficult for the souls to do. But then you advance to being able to create life forms like fish, all the way to being able to create actual solar systems, like you know, a planet the size of a bowling ball and a sun the size of like a bigger ball or whatever, like, and playing with creating solar systems. All the way to like the super ultra advanced souls that can combine their creative abilities to create actual like solar systems. It sounds so crazy, like all the things that I'm saying, but it's crazy. It's a crazy book. So anyways, you're at this university, you're with your soulmates, the spirit guides are your teachers, and so you're collaborating, you're learning, you're growing, and when you feel ready to come back and take on another incarnation, then you deliberate with your spirit guide what is going to be the situation that will be optimal for spiritual ascension. This kind of stuff might be hard to hear, especially for people that like if you think of people with different disabilities or different diseases or people put in like very, very, very tragic situations. And so I understand that and I validate that, but no one comes into an incarnation if you don't like sign off on it. Everyone, I believe, according to this book, everyone that comes into an incarnation, like no one's forced into it. Like you choose the life that you're coming into. You choose the parents that you're going to have, and you choose like literally your body and everything. And so that means like for people with extremely challenging, disabilities or diseases or whatever that might look like, that is predetermined. That is chosen. It's both chosen and predetermined and attuned to a karmic balance. So you deliberate with your spirit guide. It's so fascinating. There's a part of this where you actually read about like when you are preparing to take on an incarnation, I forget what the room is called, but like there's this like room or this space that you go in that you get to view multiple options, multiple incarnation options, and you get to actually see the life of the person. Like you can choose like, oh, there's an incarnation in Sweden, one in Brazil, one in America, one in Japan or whatever, and you can see the different incarnations, and you can see like, oh, this person's a musician or this person's doing that or whatever. This is the parents or whatever. You can see all that kind of stuff. And you can decide for yourself which one you want to choose. It's absolutely wild, bonkers, completely not mainstream belief that we're raised to believe, right? Once you decide on the incarnation and once you like literally give the go ahead and you're like, I'm ready, let's do this thing. One thing I should say too, on the particularly challenging incarnations, if you can understand dealing with pain in this life and how that builds character and how you grow, you can better understand like taking on a difficult incarnation is like a fast track to like radical spiritual ascension. Anyways, when you finally decide on the incarnation that you're gonna take on before coming into that incarnation, then there's like this period of like a final exam. There's a particular life path that is going to be like optimal for your spiritual growth and like for your purpose for that incarnation, for learning your spiritual lessons. And to do that, there are signposts throughout your entire life for you to follow that will lead you in the path that you're meant to go on. Now, there's always alternative paths. Like if you miss a signpost, like that's okay. There's always alternative paths, but following those signposts are like gonna be optimal. So for example, an easy example might be, you might be like in a coffee shop and there's this person sitting there wearing a particular color, reading a particular book, and you just notice that person and something is different. And that person eventually becomes your spouse. But in your final examination before your incarnation, you are memorizing like, I'm in this coffee shop and when I see this person wearing that color, reading that book, I know something is different. Now, when I read about that in this book, I thought about my relationship with my wife. And I recall the first time seeing her thinking like there was something different. And people might resonate with that. I just recall seeing her and it was like something was different. And I was like, whoa, what is that? There's signposts like that all throughout your life, like the path, like what school you should go to or not go to school, where you should travel, when you should travel, who you're gonna meet, the friends that you meet, what you do for work and blah, 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 etc. So you need to recognize those signposts. And if you miss them, like I said, there's always alternative paths. It's not the end of the world. It's important to listen to your intuition, I'll tell you that. Because when you have those gut checks, that means something. After your final examination, then it's like, it's ready. It's go time. It's incarnation time. I think if I remember correctly, the soul comes into the baby like I think it's like roughly within the first half of pregnancy. And I think that process is like extremely delicate because it's like this melding between the soul and the human. And it's this like extremely delicate process apparently. If you believe this, it kind of changes things in our lives. I identify myself, my core self, as that soul. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a son, I'm a brother, I have a job, all this stuff. Like, that's all just the human experience that I'm having. I'm the soul that is behind this human experience. And I understand that I've had plenty of human experiences before and will likely have human experiences afterwards until I'm done with this reincarnation cycle and I'll continue my spiritual ascension. I know that like my human, like it's not me, it's an experience that I'm having. And learning about this in terms of like life lessons makes life so important. I know for me, I am passionate about spiritually ascending. I want to spiritually ascend. I deeply care about my relationship with God and who I am. I want that unity with God. I want that total union with God. But when I came to these realizations, it really put things into perspective for me here in this life and how important my intuition is, how I need to follow my signposts, and like my life lessons and learning my life lessons. Because I believe this stuff, when I die and I go to my spirit guide review, I want to do the best that I possibly can here. So in that life review, I'm like, man, I did the best that I possibly could. And I've spiritually ascended and now I'm at a new level. What the souls detail about the earth is like, this is a very radical, difficult, troublesome experience here on earth, but also it is a blessing. It is a huge opportunity to live life to the fullest and to like spiritually ascend, to experience life. I find that to be really beautiful and amazing, and that's a major motivator that this book has given me. Anyways, that's pretty much the spark notes of the book. Let me know your thoughts. If you think I'm a crazy person for believing this, let me know and I'll get a good laugh out of it. Let me know if you vibe with it. If you're like, oh my gosh, I read that book, or have you read Dolores Cannon and blah, blah, blah. Let me know in the comments below because I'm super interested. Also, if you have any more book recommendations on this kind of stuff, definitely drop that below too, because there's a lot that I haven't read and things that I'm interested in, and I would love to get any book recommendations or video recommendations or anything like that. And it'll be helpful for other people reading the comments as well. I hope that this was enjoyable. I hope that you feel compelled to live your life to the fullest. If you're interested in these sorts of topics on self, God, consciousness, anything like that, definitely hit the subscribe button. I appreciate that. That's what this channel is all about. My spiritual journey, the things that I'm reading and learning and growing and all this crazy stuff. So definitely follow along. I appreciate you. I love you. I hope that you have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Oh, okay.